I'd like to ask the Minister for an update on the Gambling Control Bill and the progress that's been made. I know the Minister has worked very hard in this area, establishing a working group this year, and to get an update on some of the issues that they've worked through. Gambling now is so pervasive in society, if you have an issue with problem gambling, there's no getting away from it in every facet of society. It's a huge cause of concern as well, in particular I find for parents of young men in particular who are particularly vulnerable to problem gambling. It's an issue much work is needed on.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to update the Deputy on developments to reform legislation in the gambling sector as far as the Department of Justice and Equality is concerned. Firstly, the Government has prepared amendments to update the current Gaming and Lotteries Act 1956. These changes will ensure the better promotion and regulation of the various gaming and lottery type activities that take place primarily at local level. These activities are very important for charitable, sporting and philanthropic fundraising purposes. The Gaming and Lotteries Amendment Bill is currently being drafted by the Office of the Parliamentary Council. I hope to receive a text for publication by the end of this session. Secondly, the Government on the 10th of January 2018 approved a number of proposals to update the 2013 General Scheme of the Gambling Control Bill. Critically, the Government approved a proposal to establish an independent regulatory authority for the gambling industry in Ireland. The 2013 proposal had been to have the regulatory function essentially contained within the Department. This decision reflected our consideration that an independent body would be best placed to conduct the complex range of licensing, regulating, monitoring, inspection and enforcement tasks of the gambling industry in all of its manifestations. To advance the review of the 2013 General Scheme, I chaired an interdepartmental working group on gambling comprising all stakeholder departments and the Office of the Attorney General. The group met on 5 occasions between February and June of this year and reviewed all of the provisions of the 2013 scheme as well as other relevant developments since then. The group is currently preparing its report, which I hope to bring to Government for consideration as soon as possible.
I thank the Minister for his response, and I want to acknowledge the work that Minister and officials in the Department are doing in what is a vast area. And the problem we have in many respects is that technology is changing so quickly, it's nearly impossible for us to keep up the pace with that by changing legislation. We're always going to be lagging behind, and that's where I think the role of an independent regulator is so important, and I welcome the decision made by Government earlier this year to establish that independent regulatory office. My dealings with people who have had issues with problem gambling, they make the point to me that, like one man in my constituency said to me, he books his holidays at Cheltenham Week every year because the talk of betting and racing and the prices of horses is so pervasive in every programme that you turn on the radio. He says he knows when the sports programme is on, he knows not to listen to that, but on every other programme there's talk of prices. He says you're watching a soccer match and at half time it comes up what price Messi is to score next in the game. There is no getting away from it, and that's those areas of advertising, those areas that really impact on us need to be challenged in this. And even the change of culture where politicians used to go in the first day of a campaign and have a bet on themselves to win the election and have their photo taken, just as we stop the situation where visiting dignitaries are brought straight to a pub for a pint. I think that kind of change in terms of culture is really important, and an independent office will bring that about.
Yes, the Deputy referenced problem gambling, and the primary objective of the modernisation of gambling legislation must be to ensure the proper licensing and regulation of the many varied forms of gambling now available in the state. A modern and effectively regulated gambling environment will ensure to the greatest extent possible that gambling will be an entertaining activity for the majority of those who take part in it. We will ensure that there will be an enhanced consumer protection for players, effective protection for younger players under 18 years of age, and for younger persons under 18 years of age, and that we will permit, as far as we can, we will limit, as far as we can, the harmful effects of those who may be susceptible to addictive behaviour. Such people will require health-based interventions by suitable treatments. The safeguard proposals in the 2013 scheme will require development and continuous monitoring thereafter. A key element of the proposed new regulation is that it will permit the establishment and operation of a social fund supported by industry levies. Such a fund will support those professional and expert organisations involved in addiction treatment. And on the issue of advertising, potential restrictions on gambling advertising and sponsorship must be carefully considered, targeted and effective. And the 2013 scheme did contain provisions with regard to this, and in particular activities aimed at under 18 years old and vulnerable persons, they were to be prevented. These developments need to be revisited in the light of developments, technological and otherwise, since 2013. Gambling advertising and promotions are now increasingly individually targeted using new technology.
Again, thank the Minister for that. Minister, can I ask you as well, When I talk about changing technology, the whole area of gaming and online gaming is another area here that we have to get to. I'm very conscious of the game Fortnite and all of the concerns that are around that. You have these elements of those games now that have loot boxes, and this is another example of where people get that little high, the same as the excitement of scratching a scratch card. That for young, young children, 10, 11, 12, are playing these games, and it's so pervasive and it's impacting there so early. These are the type of things that we need to control. In terms of problem gambling as well, I accept your point that it is a health-based issue when somebody comes with that addiction issue, but there are steps we can take from a regulatory perspective as well on the justice side to protect people from that. So I've come across instances where young male apprentices on apprentice wages of a couple of €100 a week managed to max out 3 and 4 credit cards and run up debts of 18 to 20,000 euro before their parents found out, and the stress these young men had got under because they felt they couldn't talk to anybody. I would argue very strongly in any gambling control bill, you shouldn't be able to bet with a credit card. It should be money you have at the very least, and not be able to run up that level of debt. And they're the kind of steps we can take, along with the health measures, to address people in problem gambling, but to try and protect people as well as we can who suffer from these challenges.
Response from Minister Staunton.
I agree with the Deputy that this is an extremely complex area, especially with modern technology. However, we were pleased to support the recent voluntary declaration by the Gaming Regulators European Forum, reflecting concern amongst national authorities that video games should be appropriately licensed if they offer gambling possibilities within such games, that is. While the declaration does not have legal effect, it is intended to have a nudge effect. It clearly signals the regulatory authorities' concerns and alerts parents as to potential problems, and to take responsibility, especially where the player may be under 18. To offer gambling products in Ireland, and gaming as defined in the 1956 Act is covered by that, a licence is required under either the Betting Acts 1931 to 2015 or the Gaming Lotteries Act 56. While the Minister for Justice and Equality has certain responsibilities under both Acts, it is the Revenue Commissioners who are the responsible licensing authority under both Acts. In the context of video games, if a game sought to offer an activity or items for purchase that would fall within the current Irish legal definition of gambling, then a relevant licence would be required by the manufacturer of the game. To the best of our knowledge, no manufacturer has sought such licensing by gambling regulators in Ireland or in other EU member states to date. However, if a game offers in-game purchases advertised to increase the chances of success in the game and do not fall within the current Irish legal definition of gambling, such purchases are essentially an e-commerce activity. This would fall within recourse to normal consumer law, where there is dissatisfaction of the power to consume with the purchase. However one might regard in-game purchases and how they might be marketed, it must be clear that they fall within the legal definition of a gambling activity to engage the regulatory attention of mine or other departments responsible for that regulation. This is a position which is also shared by many EU member states. Thank you.
Number 9, in the name of Deputy Murphy, 30 seconds.
Last Concordia, I want to ask the Minister